remember when we was kids, the only wild animals around this blackberry picking time, and people in town said Dad told the story, keep them out of the blackberry patch. But Aunt Magdalene, I can remember I wasn't much bigger than Dad, but I'm with him. Aunt Magdalene was bigger. And the old well houses stood out in the front yard. And out under the walnut tree, there was where Dad had a log out there and had stobs on each side, and he sawed and cut split stove wood out there. Of course, Mom had a wood burning stove. So she sent Aunt Magdalene out after some stove wood. I don't know whether she was making jelly or what it was. Anyhow, she didn't want to leave the stove. And she sent Aunt Magdalene. Lord, here come Aunt Magdalene in the house. She just played marbles on her coattail. Mom, there's a bear out there, and all of down that old hickory tree piece down that bottom was so down and red topped. It was, just red top how tall it gets. And it was in summertime. I guess it's just ready in bloom. And she seen that bear. She went after the stove wood, and she seen that bear, going down through that meadow, parting that meadow as he went. And we'd been blackberry picking, and we come up on a great big pile of weeds cut and piled up, And Grandma didn't tell us nothing about it. She was afraid to get us scared. We was a pretty good little piece. We was on the other side of that hickory tree. She said, "Oh, come on, there ain't no berries down here. Let's go to the house. I'm getting hot." Well, we was kids. We marveled, well, what that many weeds that was? But she knows that thing's bed, he was cutting and piled them up for a bed. We went to the house. And Aunt Magdalene seen that one. Dad was somewhere off of the lake. And I don't remember exactly whether old Nellie, old Maud won. It might have been old Queen. Seemed like one of them had a little coat. Dad had the coat. He always put a halter on it, fastened it to her trace, on the side, where he trot alongside it. And I remember Mom sent Magdalene upstairs to watch out the upstairs windows, see which way the bear went, or see where it was. She gets the gun, goes up the road, up there with the old chestnut tree, meet Grandpa with the gun. And she gives him the gun. He gets him, cuts across the orchard place to go see if he can see the bear. And she brings the team on the house. I know there used to be a porch out between the big log part of the house where we stayed. There was 2 rooms built out on a long porch, and they didn't use them. That's where they hired in Magdalene. We all had smallpox there. And Dad kept his deer and stuff in them spare rooms out there. He just kept his harness and stuff there until he didn't have no gear room down to the barn. And she ungeared the horses, put them in, and had Magdalene watching for the bear upstairs. The boy I was downstairs looking out the other window, just scared half to death. Because I didn't know hardly really what the bear was. They just looked at the bear. Such as that just stuck in my mind, things that you just never forget that happened.
Now you just said something. You said there was 2 rooms off the country. You lived in the log part of the house, and there's
2 stories.
And there's a big long porch, and there's 2 rooms out where you and who else and somebody else that had
Smallpox.
You had smallpox. You caught what? You caught it when you was.
Zelly Eastwood, Logan Eastwood and them lived across the orchard down, well, it's down below that graveyard over below James. You might know where the graveyard is down there. Well, there was a house set down, and Logan Eastwood lived down there, and he had a board mill down there, and there was a lower well. Well, his daughter come in, and she rode the train. I don't know where she'd been, whether it was Evans or where, but she come in, and she had the smallpox. She had a veil over her face to keep anybody from knowing she had it. She rode the train. And come in, went down to her daddy's and stayed down there. Well, I think they caught him from her. Well, Mom and I think had him first. Well, of course, they put me in. I was a baby. I had one smallpox. It was on my lip. That's all Papa had. And they put Mom and me, and of course they put Magdalene in there with Mom too. Because Dad, he'd cook and bring the meals in, set it out on the porch in front of the door, and then Mom would get up and get it and take it in. And he went around with an old cob pipe in his mouth all the time. Well, Logan and them, they didn't tell that Zelly was down there with them. And he'd come up there and sit and talk to Dad after all for hours time, and they'd draw water out of the well. Mama said she didn't know how in the world Dad missed having them, or getting them. But said she believed that old cob pipe was what kept him from taking it.
Smoking stuff?
Just smoking that old pipe, carrying it around. Well, then, Aunt Ida took down with her. And then Magdalene, they made her stay in there with Aunt Ida while Aunt Ida was I don't know how long it took to have them work out and get over with it. But anyhow, Magdalene had to stay double time. In prison, they called it.
Couldn't get out and couldn't do nothing.
But Dad never did take it. But he'd cook the meals and bring it and set it down. See, there was 2 rooms had been built on out of, that wasn't logged. Naturally, in the main part of the house, it was one big room and then a room upstairs. Then there was a breezeway between that, and then the kitchen was built out to itself. The old people used to make the kitchen out away from the other house. I don't know why. Well, the roof was all together from the breezeway, and the kitchen was all in together, so Dad just boxed up, like Jack did the porch out here. And he made a dining room then for Mom between the kitchen and our bedroom. And they never did use them rooms. And they finally tore them down. Well, the storm come along and tore them up. And they tore them down. And finally. But the main part was the log house, where the Indians carried up, one coffin. Was just 2-story log. And then that breezeway, and then the other kitchen room was built up out there. And then the box in. Made us a home anyhow.
Big house, huh?
Yeah. Oh, did you ever get that bird? Well, they finally got people to come out from town, and they tracked him down on the river, but they thought maybe it was one that, the circus had come through, and maybe I think they said it was one of the cages, overturned or something, some of the animals got out, but they didn't tell it for a long time. So they didn't know just what kind it was out. But they seen the tracks, but I don't know if they ever did catch it. Because they didn't around there, but people did see the tracks and all. But they thought at first Dad's just telling them that so they'd keep them out of the blackberry patch. But we run up on his bed, but Mom didn't tell us that's what it was. She just said there's no blackberries down the rest of the house. She didn't know that. And after that night, we continued to met. So it was a bear out, but...
How How old do you reckon you was then?
Oh, I was probably 6, 7 years old. I don't know if I was going to school or not. Don't remember.
That's, you're 86. 86. I'll get booked here in a minute. You're,
Ooh, I will be climbing the ladder.
you're what, 80 years old now? So,
The 81 February.
yeah.
Grandpa was 86.
Yeah.
Just think, I just like about 5 years being up with Dad. A lot of things can happen 5 years old.
80, 91. Now about 1911. You figured, Jeff. Now, Grandpa, your dad was born and raised around here, right? Think about this for a second. Illinois didn't become a state until 1880. What?
I'm not much on the jargon.
Illinois has just been a state about 50, 60 years. I think Illinois was made a state in 1880.
1918.
1880.
18. I think it was about 1813.
I think it was 1818. I can't remember right now. That's trying to think back of what it was like back during Grandpa's time. Now, what remember when we were moving into the old house over here, and we went through a whole bunch of that stuff over there. We found that letter. Remember that letter we found from that guy? He was in a prison. He was a prisoner of war. Remember that? This guy was a prisoner of war during the Civil War, wasn't he? During the Civil War, he was a prisoner of war, and he wrote to somebody, one of your relatives, one of our relatives somehow.
Some of Uncle John Gates' folks.
Yeah. And yeah, and he had written, and he was all some shirt tail relation, and he was asking for money. He said he was in a prison. He was a prisoner of war, and he needed $200, wasn't it? To buy
I don't remember.
To buy himself out of that prisoner of war camp. He was a prisoner of war during the Civil War.
He's probably dead by now.
I think we lost him, Grandma.
I think when you said it, $200.
I think we lost him. That was that would have been 125, 130 years ago, Jeff. I think he might have passed on by now. If he ain't, he's doing fairly well. But I doubt if he's getting around very good.
You know, I heard that newsman on TV that morning, news, Willard Scott, ain't that his name, Willard Scott? I think he showed a man's pictures as 115 years old. Didn't look bad.
115.
I think that's the oldest.
That's doing pretty good. If you still get around, to be that old just to sit there and just live, I don't know if I'd care for that.
I don't. Now, Aunt Layla's down there. She's 101 or 102.
101 or 100?
She's 101, I think, this last year. Her birthday is the 26th day of December, 6th day after Christmas. And I think she was 101 this time. So they celebrated her picture come out in the paper, and they had a big write-up putting her 100th birthday. And I think in that last Christmas. She'd be 102 this Christmas. And Marie's same age I am. I was born in February, she was born in May. And Marie said a lot of times that she look up and smile at her like she knows her and all. Said she'll talk to her or something, and she said, "Oh, I'm tired, I want to go to sleep." And I don't know whether she's able to get up out of bed or whether she's just in bed and just when they take her and move her. I don't want to live like that.
Now who's she sister to?
Mom.
She's sister to your mother. Now how many sisters did she have? How many brothers and sisters?
Oh, I think there was about 8 of them, 7 or 8 of them. There was Aunt Layla, Mom and Aunt Layla, and Aunt Bethel, and Aunt Evie, Uncle Bailey, and Uncle Cliff. And there were some babies dead. Grandpa had 23 children. And 12 by
You
one.
thought you had lots of children.
12 by one wife and 13 by the other.
You thought you had lots of children.
That was your grandfather?
My mother's dad. He's married twice.
And both of his wives shot themselves. One had 12 children and the other had 13. Is that right? That's 25. Boy, you.
Grandma died. She had little twin babies. And on, used to, the first day of May, they'd look down take a mirror and look down the well, you know, and see their future. And Mom said Grandma was sitting on the doorstep, and her and, I don't know if it was Aunt Layla or Aunt Bethel, they was, had a mirror looking down the well, and they seen 2 little coffins, you know, and another, you know, and Grandma, she knows what they was talking about, but she made them come away. Mom didn't know what it meant, you know, but Grandma knows that they had seen the future, what was going to happen. And one of the little twins died, then one along to the other died, and she did too. But they send them little coffins past down the well. I don't know what it was. They had old time ways of doing things back in the day.
When did they do that?
It was back when Mom was a kid.
I mean, they'd take a mirror and they'd shine it down the well. And when was
First day of May.
First day of May, and you can see the future.
There ain't very many wells you can shine a mirror in nowadays.
Well, we got one at our house. We're our front.
You know, the stuff like that, that's just, you know, fascinating.
People wouldn't believe it nowadays. See, it really happened back them days. But nowadays, it sounds foolish.
Well, don't you think the reason it sounds foolish because many people nowadays, they don't have enough faith? They don't have enough faith. People, you figure people back, this is the way I look at it anyhow. People back a long, long time ago, many, many years ago, they lived life. What they did every day had pertained to their life and death. I mean, there was darn few things that people used to do for just the pleasure
They
of
lived
it.
for survival. They wasn't living to make money like people are today. You know, there's a preacher here the other night preached on, He took it where, you know, Joseph was sold, you know, to the slaves, you know, his brothers sold him. And he was sold for so many coins, you know. And then he went on and finally was ruler of one nation, you know. And then there was a famine come, and these brothers had to go buy corn from this brother. And he happened to put the coins back in the sack when they buy the corn, you know. And he said, now then, people all they think about is the coins and the corn and the coins, and they don't leave room for the cup. You see, then this brother knows that these was his brothers, but they didn't know he was their brother. And he had this cup, you know, put in his youngest brother's sack. And then, of course, then after they went on their journey, he had somebody to go pick them up, you know, and bring them back because he had the cup in his sack. And he went on to explain that, you know, they said people nowadays, all they're interested in is the coin and the corn and the coin, and they don't leave room for the cup. And said, see, he went on to explain it then, the cup was where Jesus, you know, had to drink of the cup in the garden, you know. I've never heard you preach on like that, but it just come right out. He just made it look so simple that it looked like a child could understand. But I just never had. I said, well, that's the way of a lot of people. They're just interested in the corn and the coin, and they don't leave room for the cup.
Well, nowadays, used to, I feel cheated living nowadays. Living the way we do nowadays, I feel cheated. Because...
well, you've been left out of a lot of experience. You didn't get to experience your knowledge. See, them people didn't have book learning. They had to learn by experience. And a lot of them people, they got their experience through, see, back when God taught them and showed them what to do. A lot of them people, you see, come on, that lived through way back there when Moses led them out of Egypt, you know, they had to finally live by faith. And I think maybe that we may have to come to that we depend on God for what our food and raiment before we believe it. We just don't know.
Well, right now, Grandma, I have to be so wrapped up in the everyday life of, my everyday life consists of making money. And it's not because I want to.
You have
it's
to
because I have to.
You have to do it to exist.
And
it don't leave no room for the cup, you see. You're so busy making coins and the coins, and you don't have room to serve God or do the things that you'd love to do.
Like back years ago, it fell to a man. He wasn't just working. A man wasn't just working. He had a family. He raised a family. When he was working,
there was love in that.
And everything he did, he showed his boys how to chop wood. He showed his boys how to make a single tree. He showed his boys how to make wheels. He showed his boys how to make barrels. He taught them how to live one day to the next.
That's what I told that boy. They come up here and borrowed my hose. He come and borrowed the last hoe I had. I told the boy, I said, well, that's the last one I got. I said, will you be through with it tonight? Oh, yeah. 1 2 weeks later, I didn't have the seed. And I asked Fred about it. He sent one up here, and it wasn't my hoe. It's a little little narrow thing that done been wore out years ago. Mine was a broad hoe. And then I had another one that had a heavy handle in it that when you hit a weed, it wouldn't bend. So they parked the truck down here, and the hose is in the truck. I didn't do nothing to take that little hole down there, put the truck and got mine out and brought it to the house. Well, I didn't have it a week till they come back again to borrow the hose. I told him, I said, this is the last hole I've got now. And I said, this is my hole, the one I use. And I told the boy, I said, you see it? You see what kind it is? I want my hole back. Now, that little thing he sent up here the other day, I said, "Wasn't my hoe." Well, he never did bring it back. So he is up here after some apples one day, and he said something like that, and I told him, I said, "I need my hoe. I've got to cut these weeds out from under this fence." He said, "Well, they're down there in the truck," but he said something about, "Go get," no, they're not. "Oh, well, you coward, you, if you're afraid to go get it, I ain't." So I walked down there that night and got my hoe and brought it to the house, and I cut the weeds few every night. Just about between two posts, you know, it'd be about all I could cut from the time the sun got down, you know, because it was hot that day. And I finally got it all cut out, and I got down there, I got into a wasp nest, got stung once. I tell you, that wasp nest is that big around. And between one post is down there right out from the old well, across the road there from the old well, and between two of them posts, there was 3 wasp nests in that one span. I seen them all, seen them flying out, and I take my hoe and mash the nest, you know, before they got out. But this nest, the big, is on fastened to 2 bunches of weeds, you know, and when I hit one side, but they all flew out because it was hanging down, you know, and they was underneath. And it looked like 100, but I didn't get bit but one. He bit me right along on my leg there. So I come to the house, I got me a pint of gasoline, and I went back, and when they settled, boy, I went in there, I threw them under. I hope I got the one that bit me in the hand. And then I took my hoe and smashed their nest and tore it up. So I got my hoe back, so the other day Fred brought 2 holes up here, you know, as far as both poles. Brought 2 of them. He had that little hole, I told him, I said, "This hole is mine. Let's go ahead and keep it up. I don't want he brought the other back, and I already had mine in here, my main hole. So I got my hole back in there. I told that boy, I said, "Well, Jack always," he said, "I brought a hoe from home, they done broke the handle out of it." I said, "Well, Jack always, in the wintertime, that's what he done. He made hoe handles and axe handles and things," and I said, "He had put handles back and all was broken." I said, "But Hank and them, I've got hammers, I've got shovels, hoes, axes. I ain't got but one good axe left on place. What's the handle ain't been split. See, that hit something, that hit over and bust handle."
Oh, Bill, I don't bust handles out of a lot of stuff. But a lot of times I'll go to a sale or something, and I'll buy a box full of this, that, and the other thing. Or I'll see a hammerhead laying someplace, and I'll pick it up and I'll take it home. And when I see Bill and I see the hammerhead, I'll give it to Bill. And Bill, he's all the time saying he just hates to come out to my house because he says, "Oh, he's got a hammer that needs a handle." And he'll take it home. He likes to whittle and work with wood and stuff. He got a bunch of hickory or ash or what have you, and he'll just take it and he'll put handles in it and just everything. Well, he made me a handle for a regular claw hammer. And he says, "This is a Kentucky handle here. This makes this a Kentucky hammer." And he says, "If you'll notice," he says, "it's kind of crooked on top this way." And he says, "It's kind of crooked on top this way." He says, I put this together." He says, "I figure only somebody that was leaning a lot that was from Kentucky could use one of these." He said, "This is for you."
Well, Jack had a vise out there he put up on the side of about where the old cider mill is. He had him a vise there. And on rainy, bad days, he'd go out there, you know, and he had cut timber, you know, axe handles and things like that. He'd go out there and he'd put them in that vise, and he had a draw knife, you know, and he'd shave them off and pick them down. Then when it quit raining, he'd take his axe or his hammer or whatever it was, and if he couldn't get that old handle out, he'd lay them on the fire and he'd burn them out and he'd put the handle in. on rainy bad days. Well, that's what he done. He couldn't stay in the house. He wouldn't want to stay in the house all the time. He wanted to be out. So that's what he done. He never let his shovels, holes and things, all the handles get out.
You can put linseed oil and turpentine on everything. Nowadays, people smell linseed oil and turpentine. They think it's the most terrible smell. I just love the smell of linseed oil and turpentine.
Well, they know what to do to preserve things to make it keep. See, they ain't so much in doing it, it's what you know how to do. But if you know how to do and don't get it done, it just don't get done.
Yeah, ain't that true? Ain't that true?
You getting sleepy?
Well, I don't know whether to take off tonight or get up real early in the morning and do it.
Well, whatever you know where you got to go and I takes to get there. I'd be glad if you stay awake. Where's that part, sir?
Yeah, but if we stayed tonight, we'd have to bother you to get up.
Well, that don't matter. You got all day to get up.
Well, I've got to be over there by 8. Uncle Milo said we could be plumb to Louisville by 8 o'clock in the morning. So it must be right at 2 hours, 2.5 hours to Elizabethtown. Yep, Kentucky, ma'am.
I used to have one for the car, and I don't even know if it's been thrown away. Why was that some in his car?
Maybe she was taking the crap that Miranda gave you a couple.
No, those are all Illinois maps. I don't think they did any good down here. Well, if I left here by about 5 o'clock, I should be able to get over there by 8. We'd have to get up at 4.
When you sleep, go out and turn you up and try to you won't be able to wake you up. Even if you do it on the regular.
Well, you wouldn't have to stay awake very long. You probably until you got out to the truck and got back in the sleeper and then fell asleep again. You ain't worth much, are you? Ooh, my feet don't fit no limbs.